Tonight, I wanted to talk about what occurred Friday. Alabama versus Cincinnati, Georgia versus Michigan. It's an all-SEC national championship game. I am disappointed in that. It's unfathomable to the fact that I, even being a Michigan fan, picked Michigan to beat Georgia because even though Michigan didn't play their A game, and if they played their A game, it could have been a game, it didn't matter. Georgia was the superior team. If it would have taken Georgia playing their B game, B minus game, and Michigan playing a perfect game for Michigan to win. I mean, Georgia's just that far ahead in coaching, in talent, in development. Rome wasn't built in a day. So as a Michigan fan, I'm optimistic for now about the future moving forward. But Georgia just a far superior team. And for Cincy, it's almost the same thing. You know, Rome wasn't built in the day for Cincy either, and Cincinnati not having the same tradition or talent base or pipelines or the money or the, passion within the university for football that Michigan does. If Luke Fickell's going to stay there long term and get the Bearcats back to the playoff, they have a lot more building to do than per se Michigan. But this playoff was between two built programs who have been playoff ready and who have participated in the playoff before, especially in Alabama, Georgia as well, between two new programs. A program who has been somewhat of a contender, but more of a pretender for the past few years in Jim Harbaugh's Michigan Wolverines. They finally came through after being unranked for the first time in the preseason since 2014. And the Cincinnati Bearcats have been on the rise. They caught people's attention last year. A lot of people thought they should have been to the playoff last year. They lost in the Peach Bowl to Georgia last year. This year they make it, lose to Alabama. They were much more competitive in last year's postseason than they were this year's. Granted, they were facing an opponent inferior to this year's Crimson Tide. But anyway, it's very interesting. It just shows that the SEC, for now, at least the top tier of the SEC, is that much ahead of everyone else. You have Bama, you have Georgia, and they're far ahead of everyone else this year. And you could maybe put Ohio State in that category, but they went 10-2. They made too many mistakes along the way, whereas Georgia and Alabama, they made some, but they were consistent enough, disciplined enough to ensure that they could have a chance at a national title. Watching how Ohio State played in the Rose Bowl tells me that, they're still tough. They have the talent to hang points on Georgia's defense. They have the talent to beat both Georgia and Bama. I'd say Michigan this year was built to beat Ohio State, saying this as a Michigan fan, and we would have had their number even if we matched them up at almost any point in the season, especially after the State game. But Ohio State this entire year has been more equipped to deal with a team like Georgia, like Alabama. That's just some thoughts. I think that the matchup between all the teams that we saw in the playoff on Friday and the matchups that we saw with some of the teams on Saturday proves that playoff expansion would not be a bad idea. And the goal of playoff expansion shouldn't even be, get a new national title like every year. That's not going to happen when you have great coaches like Kirby Smart and Nick Saban, but it will increase it'll increase a chance that they slip up, per se. So it'll increase the probability of a national champion like every few years, a new contender. It'll give more opportunity. But, Georgia and Alabama, they just look so far ahead, and we're going to get to it in a few minutes here. I just wanted to kind of introduce the topic, talk about it a little bit. I'm going to talk just for a few seconds here about my early thoughts on the Alabama-Georgia matchup. My prediction and preview video, for that matchup, the national title game, will release later this week. So hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you can get notified when I post that video. Also, give this video a like and comment your thoughts on the playoff games down below. What did you think about Georgia and Alabama's dominating wins. It showed offensive firepower and defensive firepower on both teams. And ironically enough, Alabama's defense looked really good. Georgia's did too, but Georgia's focus and shocker was the offense, whereas for Alabama's it was their defense. My early thoughts are Georgia versus Alabama. Georgia definitely has more momentum, more fight, at least on the surface, than Bama does. A lot of factors are in Georgia's favor. The spread at the moment is screwing you, though, because putting Bama as an underdog is just, it's not learning your lesson. I mean, you saw how motivated Bama was to beat Georgia when they were a 7-point underdog. They're a 3-point underdog. It grew from opening 2.5. A lot of people are going to choose Georgia to win this rematch. That's just some of my early thoughts. We're now going to get to the nitty-gritty details, specifically Georgia versus Michigan. And then after that, we will dive equally into Alabama versus Cincy. So here we are, Georgia versus Michigan. We're going to try and spend maybe 5 minutes on each. Stetson Bennett had a phenomenal game. And I said in the Georgia video that they should have had faith in their own staff choosing Stetson Bennett over JT. And there were some, you were rightful to question it a little bit. And I thought Michigan would win. I did not think Stetson Bennett would do this good. Props to him. I mean, his story is amazing. Going 20 of 30 for 313 yards and 3 touchdowns is awesome. Dude made some high caliber throws. He made one mistake that did not cost his team. It was, I think, on 3rd and medium, he flung the ball in the middle of the field. It could have been picked off if it was thrown a tad bit lower, or if a Michigan defender put himself in a better position. That was the one mistake. And maybe he made some more, but, I mean, he played a really good game. Stetson Bennett, from how he played against Michigan, Alabama's defense against Cincy looked really good. For the entire season, Alabama's defense has not been that much better. They have not been much better than Michigan's defense. Stetson Bennett had wheels. The O-line protection was perfect. He had wheels. He was a dual threat. Got some first downs on his own, eluded plenty of Michigan defenders, and threw dimes. Which to me says this guy is the guy you got to roll with. That Todd Monken was 100% right. That Kirby Smart was 100% right. This guy is probably better than JT Daniels, and we've just all been refusing to pound that through our thick skulls, and it's finally time. He tore up a really good but not elite secondary. He eluded elite pass rushers, and part of that was the scheme and testing the outside and Michigan having to defend that. But regardless, he had a really good game. He is my MVP of the Orange Bowl. Stetson Bennett is, personally. And, I mean, listen, he has a game like this tonight. As long as Georgia's defense plays well, then he'll beat Alabama. The issue is, of course, you gotta cover well against Bama. They have talented wide receivers. John Mechie is out, but we'll preview this a little later. Michigan player of the game was probably J.J. McCarthy, because when he came in, there weren't turnovers anymore for the most part. 7 of 17, 131 yards, and a touchdown. He eluded Georgia defenders. He did literally what Stetson Bennett did, with little to no O-line protection, and as a freshman. And that's not saying he was more impressive than Stetson. No. My point was he was the best guy on the team. Cade, 11 of 19, 106 yards, 2 picks. Cade played his worst game of the year. McCarthy did not have an amazing elite game. We would have scored another touchdown or two if he did at the time he was put in. He did show why he has a higher ceiling, though. And in my opinion, why he's going to win the starting job next year, but that's a whole different discussion. That's kind of previewing the quarterbacks. Rushing-wise, Georgia ran for 190 yards, 5.4 yards per carry. They had a long 31. Michigan had 91 rushing yards, 3.4 yards per carry, and a long of 19. The long was by Hassan Haskins. Receiving, Georgia's running backs and tight ends specifically dominated in that category. Michigan, Eric All, and Donovan Edwards, a tight end and a running back. So tight ends and running backs being used by both of these teams. Georgia doing it much better, scheming it a lot better. Michigan had questionable play calling, like a trick end around that I thought was the stupidest thing, especially with Georgia's D-line. Michigan didn't straight up pass enough, is what they didn't do. I saw many times as a Michigan fan, there were wide open Michigan wide receivers, and Cade couldn't hit him. JJ could hit him better, but Michigan didn't execute throwing the ball enough. We tried passing 36 times, only completed 18 of them. We tried rushing 27 times. We needed to straight up pass more, but specifically switch to JJ McCarthy earlier. Like after halftime, we should have put him in because we have nothing to lose. We're down 27-3. That was effectively the final score as neither team scored in the third, and both teams got a touchdown each in garbage time. Props to Georgia, props to Kirby Smart. I think that, Kirby, I said this previewing the Clemson game or talking about it. I don't know if I made a preview video on it anymore, but I said that Kirby, outside of playing Nick, is an elite head coach. When he plays Nick, because Nick knows who he is, he knows who Kirby is as well as Kirby knows himself because they've been coaching together. They did at Alabama for years and even before that. Outside, I kind of underestimated this factor, outside of Nick, Kirby, outside of facing Nick at least, Kirby is a elite head coach, has a winning record against top 10 teams, etc. And against a team like Michigan who doesn't have the most talented and whose offense is not the most, who isn't ultra explosive, that's what Kirby Smart thrives against. We don't have like a legendary offense like 2019 LSU or 2020 Bama, and those are the only offenses that Kirby really struggles against, offenses with elite quarterbacks. And Michigan does not have an elite starting quarterback. So that's just my thoughts. Again, kudos to Georgia. Defense is definitely number one in the country. It held a great, not elite, but it held a great offense to basically 3 points, not counting that extra 8 points, to be real. So that's Georgia versus Michigan. Georgia got a lot of momentum, a lot of drive heading into the national title game. Do not lose it. Do not think that it's going to be easy, and I don't think you will. But don't let that 3-point favorite and everyone praising you and being stunned get to your head. Learn from your mistake, and you will beat Bama. Alabama and Cincy is, kind of a different story. People expected Alabama to roll over Cincy, not necessarily in the way they did, though. A lot of people expected Alabama to hang a lot more points on Cincinnati. But I guarantee you people did not expect Bama to rush for 300 yards against Cincinnati, nor did they expect them to hold Cincy to, 6 points. This game, you know what the over-under for this game was? 57.5. The Georgia-Michigan over-under was 46, by the way. So it ended up being the opposite. Cincy, Alabama was a defensive battle. Michigan, Georgia, honestly, If Michigan played their A game, that would have been a shootout. It's because it was mainly the offense that faltered. Anyway, Alabama, Bryce Young, 17 of 28, 181 yards, 3 TDs, and a pick. Alabama did not throw it a whole lot, at least to what they normally do. Alabama tried running the ball a lot more. Obviously, Brian Robinson, 26 carries, 204 yards. And I think that was because Alabama knew, Nick Saban, Bill O'Brien knew that, honestly, since he has elite corners, Ahmed Gardner, Kobe Bryant, those are elite corners. They don't have an elite front seven, though. And you have a very talented O-line. It has had its struggles, but Cincy is, talent-wise, one of the least star-talented teams you have faced. Far better developed than a lot of teams in the SEC, but star talent can show. This game it showed. Cincy's defense didn't show it. Their defense, holding Alabama to 27 points with how atrocious that offense was, is amazing. It's amazing, honestly. But since he only put up 6 points, Ritter only went 17 of 32 for 144 yards and 4.5 average yards per pass, which is just pathetic. I expected Ritter to do better. Since he was going to beat Alabama, I wasn't depending it on Ritter having a great game to do it. I was kind of depending on Cincy's defense to get 2 or 3 turnovers. They got 1. I said that duo, Ahmed Gardner and Kobe Bryant, someone would get an interception, and they did. Brian Cook, actually, so not one of the duo. He got a pick, and that was because Bryce Young was pressured. But after that drive, after the pick, pardon me, what ended up happening was Alabama just sacked Cincy 20 yards back, and Cincy had to punt. And that summed up the entire game. Alabama, 181 yards passing, 301 rushing. They rushed for 6.4 yards per carry. They had 47 carries, only 28 pass attempts, only 17 completions. Alabama knew that Cincinnati trying to run an air raid against them was not going to be smart. So they just ran and passed when they felt like it worked, and it worked, and they won 27-6. Ritter did not do enough. His O-line especially didn't do enough. Alabama outgained Cincy 482 yards of offense to 216, more than double of Cincinnati's yard total, and it was worse. The ratio was far worse before the fourth quarter even began. Cincy had no turnovers, Alabama had 1, but that doesn't matter when your offense is moving up and down the field and Cincinnati's is moving. They're doing a backwards moonwalk into their own end zone with how many times they got sacked. Alabama had 27 first downs to Cincy's. You see the more up-tempo offense led in TOP with 7 more minutes. So Alabama went back to more of an old-school football game. It worked against Luke Fickell's and specifically their DC, Mike Tressel's, kind of old-school defensive approach. They beat Cincinnati by 21 points. This game was, Alabama didn't throw as much as I thought. Cincy put up a really good fight. Again, it was 17-6 at the end of the third. Cincy had plenty of opportunities to get momentum in the third quarter, to make it a one-score game, or even to take the lead. Never materialized because of Bama's defense. Will Anderson had 2 sacks. My player of the game is Brian Robinson for Alabama. 204 yards, 26 carries. He was trucking through Cincinnati defenders, just pushing forward. He reminded me a lot of Hassan Haskins. A lot. And that right there, with a Heisman QB, Hassan Haskins with a Heisman QB, that's deadly. Always falling forward, making some shifty moves, but mainly just powering through, doing what you're assigned to do. Brian Robinson isn't a Najee Harris. He isn't not really a Derrick Henry either. He's not anywhere close to the best running backs Alabama has, but he gets the job done. Underrated guy. And with a Heisman QB, talent on all sides of the ball, it'll work wonders, even though he's not a Heisman guy himself. John Mechie being out obviously hurt the Tide. You could see it in the passing game. Jamison Williams had to be utilized in a different way. He wasn't really a deep threat. They used him kind of like Mechie in a certain sense, like shorter, medium passes. But in the end, Alabama came out and won. That pass game, though, they're going to have to... Mechie was critical in parts when they were tearing up Georgia. It'll be interesting to see if Ja'Cory Brooks or others can step up and, replicate what Alabama did against Georgia. Those are my thoughts. Again, the SEC, the top tier at least, just dominating and showing that they belong in the national title. And even though I wanted Michigan to win, and I had reasons to believe they would, and it would have been amazing to see a Cincy, Michigan, or, an Alabama, even an Alabama-Michigan national title, It's a national championship game between two rivals. I'm going to watch it and have fun. I'm going to live review that and probably get on like 30 minutes early, as it will be a Monday night. That's all I have to say for this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can get notified when I post new content. Thank you all for watching. Again, comment your thoughts down below on the playoffs. Tell me what you thought about Alabama and Georgia's dominating wins. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys around.